Auto GPT. Depending on who you ask, it is either going to be the downfall of civilization or our savior. You figure if this is actually the dawning of the AGI era, it will be able to do something useful like help me shop for a bike. That's right, I'm going to give it first test run to Auto GPT, clean install, haven't touched it yet. And here's what I want it to do. I thought to myself, what would be a great use case for something that can access the internet, that has the ability to problem solve, gather more information, that actually fits the bill? I'm not trying to turn $100 into $1,000. I'm not trying to destroy the world. What's a use case that somewhat matters to me that is actually doable by one of these early recursing LLM monstrosities? So here's my game plan. I'm going to install fresh AutoGPT and ask it to help me find the best electric bicycle for me. I'm going to say I live in Wisconsin and that I have a 5-mile commute to work. I have a budget, $800. I'm open to getting a used bike, and it has to be available for purchase now. None of these concept Kickstarter things. I'll probably, if there's a space for it, put in factors to consider, suggested items to look for, such as total price, specification comparison on range and speed, and a feature comparison, like how many speeds does it have? Is there a manual throttle? And then things to judge how legitimate the seller is, and the reviews of the bike, how good is it? The output, what I always try and create when I'm buying something is a matrix or a table of features side by side. So I'm going to ask AutoGPT to give me a table of the top bike options with comparison columns and a link to where I can actually purchase. I think this will be an excellent demonstration of capabilities if it can pull this off and be a power comparison shopper. You need to buy a dishwasher, you want to get the best webcam. This is something I do all the time. I'm a power shopper, and this would be huge to gather the information so that I can make the decision. So here I am on the GitHub page for AutoGPT. It is saying to download the stable release. But let's see if we can get some step-by-step instructions. Looks like we may be using Pinecone for a vector database on it. And here's how to configure the API keys. Excellent. Installation. Step 1. Make sure you have all the requirements listed above. VS Code plus dev container. VS Code, check. Dev containers, check. Docker. Docker, check. Python, check. OpenAI API key, check. We'll see if we need Pinecone. Back to the installation. Clone the repository. And restart. And accept. And run this command. Docker check. Run this command. Change the directory. Install dependencies. Find the env template. Make a copy of the template. Open the env file. Find where to put in the open API key. Okay, let's run this bad boy. And an error. Run PowerShell as an administrator. And run. And run the pip command again. And that looks better. So let's run the magic command. Enter the name of your AI and its role below. This is Shopping GPT. And your role is a bot that autonomously does research to find the best electric bicycle for sale to meet my needs. Goal 1. Find the best electric bicycles for sale that are a good fit for a 5-mile commute to work in all weather conditions that cost less than $800. When calculating cost, consider any tax or shipping to Wisconsin. Compare specifications such as speed, range, number of gears, and manual throttle. Evaluate reviews and ratings of each bike. Evaluate the reputation of the seller based on buyer reviews and other sources. And it's off. I thought I was going to be able to put in goal number 6, which would have requested the format for the output table, but this thing is off to the races. I'm kind of curious what amount of feedback it's going to give as it goes along. Oh, there's the thoughts. I will start by doing a Google search. I need to ensure that I am considering all relevant factors. Enter Y to authorize the command. I probably should have put it in manual mode, but this will be cool to see how it goes along. I can do Y-5 to run the next 5 commands. So let's see what it does. Authorized. Woohoo! It's happening. Ooh, Tom's Guide's in there. BicycleGuider.com. This is where I'd be doing a lot of searching because you can get a lot of nice electric bikes, but you don't want to overpay, and many of them are expensive. An electric bike would be cool, but I don't want to spend, more than $1,000 on one. Ooh, what is this? It's actually firing up browser windows. Yeah, I'm going to close that out for it. Maybe give a hand. Let's see. Let's pop this over to the side. Looks like it's going to be using, whoa, AutoGPT analyzing page. Okay. It's being controlled by an automated test software. Okay, that's pretty cool. I did not know what to expect when it did this, and I thought it'd be a headless kind of access of Chrome, but I just closed out the window. One summary to the memory, so it's gathering information. Just got 5 chunks on it. I'm really curious what this is going to come out like. I'm also curious what 6.8 megabytes of data it just downloaded. Thoughts. I will evaluate the specifications of each electric bike listed in the article. Did it just grab one, I wonder? Did it just grab an article for best bikes for commute, I think. I will evaluate the reviews and ratings of each bike. Ensure that I am considering all relevant factors when evaluating it. I'll write the name of the electric bicycles that meet specified criteria in a file. Color me impressed on this. This is kind of cool. I'm curious what the end result is on it, but I'm wondering how much prompt engineering needs to go into this. Now that I know how, let me send this on its way. Yes, you're clear for at least 5 more. I did see that this is hitting the OpenAI API back end, but I believe it should be using 3 or 3.5, which is pretty cheap in order to run. I didn't know quite what to expect on it. Now that I know that I only have the 5 commands for it, speech mode, that was cool. I did see where it could take 11 labs and actually have a speech mode. I might play with that later. It looks like it's pulling more information. This is really interesting. It's cooking for a while, if you will. So I'm kind of curious, maybe in future experimentations, I'm going to say just yes for, 30 commands and walk away from it. Of course, the first few times it's pretty exciting. Then again, I'm the guy that when I got my first front loading washing machine, I sat there on the floor and watched the whole cycle go through. That's what I get for being an engineer. What else is it doing? Sure, I like the thought, reasoning, plan, and criticism. Need to ensure that I'm considering all relevant factors. So it's browsing the website. Don't see, did I lose the Chrome window that it popped open, or is it doing it somewhere else? It looks like I didn't need to necessarily use Docker since I was running it straight up locally. It didn't look like I had to set up Pinecone or any vector database. It's doing some sort of storage locally. And here it goes again. Is that the same site? I'm going to close that out for it, just cuz. Maybe I shouldn't do that to really give it a run for the money, but don't think I'm interfering with it. It is scraping the sites. Exactly the sort of resources that I'd be looking at. Look at those guys. I'm curious. Oh, I wonder if it's pulling these it is pulling the contents without clearing that notification. That is interesting. Perhaps I'll rerun this, knowing that I only have the 5 directives if it doesn't come out with a really cool result. I'm really glad that I sat down to experiment with this. It was not that challenging to execute. For your benefit, I was going to just slog through whatever requirements there were, but only a handful of commands on it. One restart. Actually, that was for Docker, and I don't think I need Docker. So this is really interesting. I'm going to keep this running for a bit, keep giving it approvals, and let's see what it comes out with in the end. Tip of the hat to whoever created this, and I'll look back up who that is. Significant gravitas. AutoGPT, AutoGPT plugins, AutoGPT benchmarks. Interesting. A performance benchmark to compare the performance of AutoGPTs. AutoGPT plugin template. So it looks like they're recreating the GPT or the ChatGPT plugin concept with it. So I look forward to potentially playing with that. This may be much more flexibility and access. I did actually get access to the plugins feature for it. So I'm going to let this cook and we'll see at the end what all it comes out with. Now I will jump in here to say I think that it has gotten the information and it's looking to start evaluating it. And it seems to be there may be some errors. As a large language model, I can evaluate reviews and ratings. So let's see if it can pull the information that it's accumulated through its research on the websites and get it in a format that the LLM will be able to process it. It is interesting how much time and processing it's taking. My takeaway on this is it doesn't seem to be slowed down in browsing from having these annoying requests for notifications or a pop-up for trying to harvest your email. I wonder in its Google results if it's skipping blue links and getting to the real meat of products. This is interesting. It looks like it's evaluating code, potentially do some calculations on the metrics. Here's an interesting thing. So not only has it identified tasks and spun off sub-agents, but is actually naming them the electric bike evaluator. We're getting close to the end because I'm seeing the actual final recommendations, and I think it's just gathering some additional info for presentation. The more I see things going through, I'm wondering if I'm going to end up actually buying one of these options. Okay, here's the moment of truth. It is getting late, so what I'm going to do is let this thing rip. I've confirmed the API, it's not hitting it too hard. I'll let you know what it is at the end. But I'm going to let this run up to 200 additional commands, and I am going to go to bed. Quick update. We are here 6 hours later, and it is doing a repetitive command, and the object is invalid on a lot of these. So I don't know what's going on. I'm going to let it cook a bit longer and come back to it. Okay, so what happened here? I left this running for 6 hours and it was going along fine, maybe looking like it was doing some repetitive work, but it was still gaining information. And then it got into this death loop. It was trying to do a Google search and it has a JSON object is invalid error, but it just kept doing the exact same query that it was trying to do. And this went on for a long time. How long did it go on? Well, when I walked into it 7 hours, 6 hours later, it really had been trucking along. So it got into kind of a loop. So was that it? I have no output. I had to Control C break out of the program. So was it all a waste? Not necessarily. Here we have AutoGPT workspace folder, which is where the text files are kept for kind of the working memory for AutoGPT. And if we look under here, we have the Swagtron reviews on that one. On Cheer, that's a specific bike that we'll see here. Here's the evaluation, review URLs, electric bikes text. So if we look in here, multiple models are being held. So results are coming back and they're being crunched together so it can fit within one prompt for future processing. Models being queued up that we see here. So this is the working memory for it. Here's some reviews from websites that it pulled because I did request those. Here are review URLs that was going down, but the real money is here. the evaluation. This is really the output that it was working on. I think I saw it before I walked away. I saw it getting close to this and coming up with this verbiage. After evaluating the specifications of each electric bicycle, the best fit for the user based on provided criteria would be, drumroll, the On-Cheer Power Plus electric mountain bike. This guy. Huh, doesn't look bad. It's got disc brakes. We'll get into the specifications. Or I don't need to dig into them. It says right here the bike has top speed of 20 miles an hour, 50 miles of range. That's impressive. More than enough to cover a 5-mile commute to work. I would agree. Wow. So yeah, that sounds like a great answer from the specifications. So we have different options, different prices, and reasons why they were promising and why they may have gotten edged out by the final answer. So this, the Auto GPT was trying to build up to, it just got a little off the rails. So how do I sum up this experience? Well, the setup was super easy. I was surprised. I was expecting things to be a lot more painful. I think some of the requirements like Docker were not necessary. Great thing about AutoGPT is that a majority of it runs locally other than the accessing of the LLM. For example, the web searches and the like are all done on your desktop with a browser, essentially automating what you would be doing. Yes, you have to utilize the powerful LLMs, GPT 3.5 that's in the cloud through the API, but that's kind of a given right now. But if you had something else, you could plug it right in. I know it has the flexibility to do so. So I'm really impressed with how local this and accessible this is and free, other than any API usage that we have. It was also pretty cool that there is no database necessary. I was thinking that I might set up Pinecone as a vector database, something to serve as a memory, but this out of the box, no setup on my part, was utilizing local text files for storage. That was super impressive. So overall, the setup was as painless as you could expect outside of, for example, the single-click GUI install with GPT-4All J from my previous video. That was impressively packaged up to make it available for anyone. All in all, the installation was quite painless and step-by-step, so full stars for that one. What were my first impressions on this? Well, system was running a lot more steps and running a lot slower than I expected. But that's what struck me. I thought this was going to be flying through loops, maybe churn through 25 times. I thought it was a pretty contained prompt. I was impressed with the browser usage that was run by DevTools locally. So you saw how it would fire up the web page and just navigate it and grab the content and chunk it together. I was blown away and surprised by how at one point it ran the code to calculate the comparison criteria. It actually generated a script and executed it to get a comparison matrix, I believe it was doing. And then I was also struck by how it was thinking things through. I was really interested in this system thoughts, reasoning, plan, criticism, prompt structure that it utilizes, especially the criticism. For example, hey, I need to make sure that I'm evaluating the reputation of the seller based on reliable sources. That is solid, check yourself kind of intelligence that's baked into this. And I assume that's part of the key to success. So really critical question, what was the API usage? And this was quite striking. Bottom line, it hit an API a lot, and I do not think those failed loops at the end counted. It hit the API in this one run 2,500 times. Fortunately, I did have a purchase cap on that. Thank you very much. It cost a total of $6.67. Glad that wasn't a penny lower. That would have been ominous. Chaos GPT. The reason that it was held to a reasonable cost despite getting absolutely hammered on the API was that it utilizes GPT 3.5 Turbo as well as text embedding Ada 02. So using those lighter weight models kept the cost down. So what were the results? Did it meet the criteria? Did AutoGPT understand the assignment? Well, I got to give it a yes. It found a bike that met my criteria. Or did it? let's double check this and give it a sanity check, something that I don't think a lot of folks do when they generate these impressive early tool sets, is follow up and see what the quality of the output is. It's showing that this runs a 250 watt hub motor, but what about the speed and the range that we were promised? The estimated range is somewhere between 8 and 18 miles, which is far different than the 50 miles that AutoGPT had found in its travels. And how about that 20-mile-an-hour promised top speed? Well, it looks like it is actually more like 15 miles an hour. So, did it meet the criteria? I'll call it a yes, yet again. It did find a bike that met my criteria on price, range, and I didn't really specify the speed. But the feature set is great. I think this is an excellent candidate. Was it worth it to run AutoGPT on this mission to try and be a power shopper for me and do real comparison work? Is it worth it? Well, the time to set it up wasn't all that bad, actually. Now, what about hard cashy monies, those API costs? Well, it was less than $7 to run it, so it definitely wasn't a total deal breaker. But was it worth it? I was really surprised by the amount that it hit the API for this simple kind of query. To be sensible about it, what is your time worth? If you could send AutoGPT off for however long it needs, 12 hours, to run in the background and get you useful, actionable information that's well considered, and it costs you a few bucks, it may well be worth it. To help answer this question of if it's worth it, let's do a head-to-head challenge. Even if my time was worth $50 an hour, if I could get the kind of information I did in, say, 7 minutes, it would be more worthwhile expenditure of my time to just do the research instead of outsourcing it to AutoGPT. So let's put 7 minutes on the clock and I'll see what kind of results I can find for an $800 electric bike that meets my criteria. Okay, so let's start the timer. And time. All right, that really drove home for me. I came up with, in 7 minutes, a great number of options for it. Look how cool the Hover one is. I would still have to look at reviews, but there is just a massive selection that I came up quickly. And what's unfortunately one of the easiest ways to do it? Head on over to Amazon to get it, even if you don't buy from them, and find out what is good. The bottom line is, I found a lot of great options. I didn't filter it down to the one best one, but I am excited by a lot more of these options potentially than the one that AutoGPT was able to find me for $6 and 6+ hours of searching. So maybe for the next experiment, I will take all of these very quickly gathered short list items and put them into AutoGPT and say, hey, of these options, go search, compare, give me a table, and find out what the best answer is based on reviews and how it fits it. So now that I've had my first experience, how can I do better? As always, look first to your prompt. I felt like the system was searching in a rather narrow and repetitive way, so maybe I can phrase it to look through a broader selection of sources. Potentially I could prioritize more what I am interested in. Maybe if I said, hey, get me an e-bike for commuting 5 miles, it would have done more to find different options. Were my criteria too restrictive, that I put too many requirements on it that led to some of the churn and computation time? I didn't set up any vector database on it. Maybe that would help with the system. There's definitely room in the system to reduce repetition and handle that recurring cycles better. But this is a young system. It will get there. And definitely I've seen it mentioned online and I really felt the need for it. The results were almost there. We need a wrap it up buddy button. So when it's churning away, you need some sort of cut in command to be like, hey, stop where you're at and give me your results. So what are my takeaways from this experience? One of the killer features of AutoGPT is that, yes, it's open, You can modify it, you can contribute, but beyond that, you are in the loop. You're a critical part of priming its directive. You can tweak the behavior of it. You can set it up with different modules. You have so much input and guidance in its capabilities. One thing that really surprised me about it as it was running is that there were errors that came up from all sorts of different things, making web calls. Whatever it was doing, you would see that it would try its pattern of thought and then run into an error. But the impressive part was that didn't stop it. On the negative side, as I discussed before, the system currently can really get stuck in a loop, and there's definite growth that can happen on being able to detect and break out of those. It's a very young project that just came on the scene, and already there's huge investment by people contributing to it. It's capable now, and it will only get better. So the bottom line, I recommend trying your own task. See how AutoGPT works for what you are interested in trying it for. Something that could automate and bring actual value to you. See if it's up for it. There's a fairly low overhead to getting into it. It runs primarily locally for a lot of the important pieces. You have heavy control over it. It's easy to experiment with, and that's an important part when it comes to this age of AI. It's about getting hands-on with the tools to make sure that you're pertinent moving forward. Besides, here's a little footnote. I actually found an on-chair e-bike mountain bike for sale used locally, and I bought it. So when you say, does AutoGPT work? I have to say it does.